Thank you for tuning in to learn about Executive Order 2102 consultation with DAHP. Why have you been asked to submit your project to DAHP for review? You've been asked because you are either a state agency spending state funds or you are the recipient of a state-funded grant. The requirement for project review with DAHP was created by Governor's Executive Order 2102. Executive Order 2102 is an order signed in 2021 that requires state agencies to consider how projects they fund might impact cultural resources. The requirement for a cultural resource impact review is not new in Washington. 2102 replaces Executive Order 0505, which was a similar order signed by Governor Gregoire back in 2005. DAHP's role in the process is to work with agencies to determine whether cultural resources are present in the project area and if they will be adversely impacted by the work. So what are cultural resources? Cultural resources include the historic built environment, such as historic buildings, structures, and sites, and archaeology. Archaeology also includes cemeteries and areas where human remains might be encountered. Cultural resources are considered historic if they are listed in or have been determined eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. To be eligible, the resource must be at least 50 years old and meet other criteria that determine its significance. By sending us the information we asked for, we can determine if any such resources are present in the project area and if, based on your scope of work, they will be adversely impacted. It is important to note that this is not a project approval process. It is good faith consultation. A finding of adverse impact does not mean that your project will not be funded. We'll get into what that means later in the presentation. Agencies should consult with DAHP for any state-funded demolition, construction, property acquisition, renovation, or ground disturbance. Ground disturbance is any digging or excavation involved with a project. The process of complying with 2102 requires asking DAHP and tribes to review the proposed project for their input to avoid adverse impacts to archaeology and historic resources. It is important for agencies to note that we are only providing guidance on consulting with DAHP. Tribal consultation is also needed. If you are an agency or grantee and have questions about tribal consultation, you should reach out to your granting agency tribal liaison or the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs. We do have helpful information, a map of tribal areas of interest, and a tribal contacts list on our website to assist you. If you need a 2102 letter from DAHP, we can help you with that in just 3 steps, all via email for convenience and efficiency. The first step is to initiate consultation with DAHP. State agencies without cultural resources staff or delegated grant recipients may initiate consultation by completing and submitting a 2102 Easy Project Review Form. The form provides DAHP pertinent information about the project to be reviewed. The forms can be found on our website by searching 2102 Project Review. Please fill out the form completely to avoid the need for follow-up questions, which will result in longer review times. Be sure to download the form before entering information, otherwise your information won't come through with the form. Now we'll go through the sections of the form and talk about the information we asked for. Section 1, project title should be simple and straightforward, but not too general. For example, a good descriptive project title would be Town of Concrete Main Street Sidewalk Improvements. Main Street Sidewalk Improvements alone is too general because almost every town has one. So having the name of the town in there would help us look up the project later if we need to. Please note outside agency project codes in this section and avoid using the property owner's name unless the property is a family-named farmstead or business. Next, it asks for property name, that is if it's applicable, and then the complete address and county name. If you are unsure of the township, range, and section, you may leave that blank. Township, range, and section is helpful for projects over a large area without a fixed address, but for most projects, the address will suffice. And then on the rectangle on the right side, it asks for 1 to 2 sentence summary of the project. Just state simply what work will be done. For example, it might be an acquisition of a building, no alteration, or installation of 30 linear feet of sidewalk and ADA ramp. You will have an opportunity to provide a more detailed description later in the form. It's not necessary to state why the work is being done, just what work is being done. For example, it's fantastic if your project will provide after-school activities to at-risk youth. However, that information is relevant on your grant application, but not necessary for the project impact review done at DAHP. So you can save yourself some time by focusing just on the property and project information. Section 2 has project description checkboxes for new construction, demolition, ground disturbance, rehabilitation/renovation, and acquisition. If you're unsure, just check which ones you know apply. The written descriptions are the most important source of project information for our review. Then asks if buildings over 45 of age are involved in the project area. If you don't know the age, the form provides instructions on how to search for that on county assessor websites. Even though resources are not eligible to be determined historic until they're 50 years old, we say 45 to account for the fact that they may turn 50 by the time your project is underway. The next section asks if federal funds, lands, permits, or licenses are involved. We want to know if federal historic preservation law is applicable to the project. If so, the federal process will take precedence over 2102 as long as the projects are the same. And then finally asks if you've received the grant already or are in the process. This just gives us a sense of where the project is in the process. Section 3 is for state agency information. The name of the agency funding the project and the contact person at the agency go here. Grant amount and total project amount gives us a sense of the scale of the project. Section 4, contact information. Put the name of the person to whom the letter should be addressed here. If you are a grant recipient who has been delegated 2102 compliance, your name should go here. If you're a state agency funding a project, the appropriate agency contact should go here. Section 5 is for attachments. These should be separate attachments. They are not embedded in the form. The map should show us where the project is taking place with work area delineated. It could be the property line, building footprint, section of sidewalk, whichever applies to your project. As previously mentioned, there is space for an expanded description of the scope of work in Section 6 of the form. But if you have design drawings or product specifications, we encourage you to include them as attachments as well. Photos of any building in the project area are necessary for DAHP to assess their potential eligibility to the National Register. Attach clear JPEG images of the entire building, preferably including front, sides, oblique, and accessible rear views of the building. Section 6. Describe work to be done with allocated funding. This section is to provide more project detail if necessary. The more detailed the information provided, the less likely we are to have to follow up for clarifying information. The next section asks for site conditions and known history of the project site. So is it developed? What is the topography? What if history is known of the building on the site? It might just be a vacant lot with level gravel surface? If so, describe it that way. And then the third section asks about ground disturbance. As mentioned earlier, ground disturbance is any digging or excavation. It's important for us to know where the ground disturbance will occur because DAHP archaeologists are going to look at our map to see if your project area overlaps archaeological sites or is in a high-risk area for archaeology. If you are not digging up the whole area or not digging very deep, it's important for us to know that. Please provide the vertical and horizontal extent of ground disturbance. For example, you might say 15-foot long, 2-foot wide trench along the property line to a maximum depth of 2 feet. Step 2. Once completed, email your form and attachments to 2102@dahp.wa.gov. Allow up to 30 days for an email response. If you do not hear back from DAHP within 30 days, please feel free to reach out to us to ensure that we've received your review request. Send an email to 2102@dahp.wa.gov and please include the name of your project and the date that you sent your email. That will help us find it more quickly. The third step is on our end. You will receive either a letter or a signed project review form via email informing you whether cultural resources will be impacted by the project and if there is anything else you need to do. The possible responses you will get from DAHP are more information needed. This response means that we did not get enough information about the project or project area to determine if historic resources will be impacted. The letter or email will ask you to provide more information. For example, your project may involve replacing windows, but we've determined that the property is eligible for the National Register, so we need more information about the type of window. Avoid this by providing those details on your easy form or in attachments. Another possible response, not eligible for National Register / no historic resources impacted. This response means that there's no cultural resources present and no further contact with DAHP is required unless there is a change in scope. A change in scope is the expansion of the project area or of the work being done. If your project changes after consultation is complete, simply send us an email referencing your original project and let us know what changed. We will respond to your question and let you know if there is anything needed. You do not need to complete the form again. No adverse impact response means that cultural resources are present but won't be adversely impacted by the project. So no further contact with DAHP is needed, again, unless there is a change in scope. And then finally, adverse impact. This response means that cultural resources are present and will be adversely impacted, so further consultation with DAHP is required. If your letter states no historic resources impacted or no adverse impact, your consultation with DAHP is complete. If the project is determined to have an adverse impact, DAHP will work with the state agency to develop a memorandum of understanding to mitigate the adverse impacts. This does not mean that the project won't be funded. Mitigation is actions taken to provide public benefit when cultural resources are impacted by projects receiving public funding. Common types of mitigation include recordation of historic properties in DAHP's public database, salvage of building materials, and development of educational resources like history link articles or on-site interpretive panels. The mitigation actions, or stipulations, will be determined with input from DAHP, tribes, and the state agency while project planning and execution proceed. And that's it. Those are the 3 easy steps to consulting with DAHP under Executive Order 2102. If you have questions, you can find more information on our website at dahp.wa.gov/2102. Thank you.